Hello everyone, this is Farrell Vincent with Nation 506. I'm coming to you today with the beginning of a different series. I want to talk about troops. I want to talk about fleets. I want to talk about formations. And I want to break these concepts up in a few different ways to make sure that you can watch the video and watch the content that is more tailor-made to you and your playstyle. And in this first video, I want to actually discuss troops. And very specifically, what are troops, the various kinds of troops, and what their active ability is. And I don't know if that's what the game developers call this, but every troop has an active ability. I'm hovering over it here. You can see bomb launcher, right? And so I want to make sure that we can talk about, okay, well, what is that ability actually doing in combat? And I want to kind of briefly touch on that unit's goal or objective. I think the best place to start is, of course, melee. And for me, the best place to start within melee is actually going to be the infantry. And these are your axemen, your shielder, or your axe infantry, or your shield infantry, whatever nomenclature your alliance decides to use. I generally see axes. They are a frontline troop that is really meant for defense, and that's pretty honest. Like, you can tell by the way home guard works. So it says, in a defensive battle, a damage reduction occurs every 8 seconds. Damage taken is reduced by 50% for 4 seconds. So what does that mean? In a defensive battle, meaning your city is attacked, these guys are defending. Your uranium mine is attacked, and these guys are defending. Your stronghold position in Triangle War is attacked, these guys are defending. This ability is very, very, very good, because if you read through it in a much more simple term, for half of the fight, they take half damage. So for half of the fight, they take 50% damage. For the other half of the fight, they take full damage. Very good unit for defensive battles. If you have a scenario in which you can guarantee it, especially like Triangle War, where you can guarantee you're setting a defense fleet, that defense fleet can easily have this unit if that's your highest tier melee troop that does this. And we'll talk more about that. The tier of troop matters, but, you know, making sure that you have troops that are fulfilling the objective you have for them is also very important. The next melee troop that I want to bring up is going to be your tanks. At the various levels, you know, tanks are similar to, you know, any number of melee troops. Their ability is a little bit hard to understand at first, but it says when taking damage, you have a chance to block 50% of incoming damage. And that chance goes up based on the tier of your troop. It's not as random as it sounds against things like zombies, Mother of Doom, right? PvE events. It is a little bit more random when you're attacking or being attacked in a combat in a battle report, right? In things like Duel for Dominance, Triangle War, all of the other events. What this basically means is 1 out of every 3 attacks is going to deal 50% less damage. That's it. 1 out of every 3. So you can already see where, for the infantry, the axemen, they're the better defensive unit. Why? Because they're getting the same 50%, but they get it for half the fight, and there's not a chance. It's just half the fight they take half damage. In this case, 1 out of every 3 hits will deal half damage. They're really good against one troop that I'll talk about later when we get into mid-range. Technically 2 troops in mid-range that they're pretty good against, but generally speaking, you know, you're going to get more than 3 attacks in 4 seconds. You're going to not get too many more than 3 attacks every couple of seconds. Generally speaking, most troops' attack speed is 2. Attack cooldown 2. That's 2 seconds, which means that most troops are going to attack you twice, so it's going to be every 6 seconds, you're going to get one 50% reduction versus two 50% reductions over the 4 seconds. I know it's a lot of math, I'm so sorry, but it's very important to talk about these defensive troops. My favorite for all-purpose, I'm going to murder people, is the shredders or crushers, if your translator's a little weird. The shredders have an ability very similar to the axemen, but a little bit less on the percentage. So the reason this is more balanced is they work on attack and defense. But you're going to see here that they, when battling, any battle, a damage reduction is triggered every 8 seconds that reduces damage taken for 4 seconds. So, just like the Axemen, except now they work on offense. This is why so many alliances tell you put in shredders when you're going to attack, because again, for 4 seconds, you're going to get 2 hits of reduced damage by 34%. It's very, very good. And even when you get them up to T12s, right, it's still that 34%. You can see right there, it's, just a slight difference in the total statistics, but that stat doesn't really increase. So whether it's a T10, T12, doesn't matter. These are very good units. When you want time, when you want the enemy to take its time attacking you, which is any mid-range player, any melee player, anyone, you want the most time to deal the most damage. And then we talk about the most offensive choice possible when it comes to melee troops, the armored soldiers. Why are they the most offensive, right? Why are they the most offensive? When taking damage, you have a 35% chance to reflect 20% of the damage back at the attacker. This is big because if you've been following all of my other guides to this point, you should have a decent melee hit point. That pool gives you more hits. The more hits that gives you, the more that funnels into damage reflection. The more damage reflection you get, the more damage you deal back at somebody, and it's based on the damage they dealt to you. So if you have a very big fight where you are outmatched by a huge percentage on attack, but you have a ton of melee hit points, you can make up the difference because you are hitting them with their own damage. I promise you, it's actually a lot bigger than it sounds, but they're going to be more fragile. The rest of your melee options are all about reducing damage. These guys are not reducing damage. They're not, taking care of business in that regard, right? They're reflecting 20% of damage back to the target. So they have the least defensive option, which is why I say they're the most offensive troop. And there are a lot of players who use a lot of these in their fleets because of that damage reflection. It is very good in events like Triangle War and events like Duel for Dominance and things like that, because you can add those additional buffs from the items that can make them superficially tanky while still being able to reflect that damage. So there's that for the troop itself. Then we're going to move into mid-range, and I'm going to stick with the workshop because we're going to talk about Stormtroopers. Stormtroopers' objective, and I'll read this out in a minute, but the Stormtroopers' objective is a mid-range. And all mid-range objectives is to kill somebody's backline as fast as possible. Melee is to slow the fight down and to take more hits, right? That's Melee's job. That's what Melee focuses on. Let's slow the fight down. Let's take more hits. Let's give people time to do damage. Mid-range is all about, I'm going to take out your backline. I'm going to take out everything that's in the backline and work my way forward. You can see here that it's every 3 attacks. So if you want to change the wording from every 3 attacks to every 6 seconds, the same is true. The attack cooldown is 2 seconds, right? So every 6 seconds, we're going to deal tons of damage, which I love that it's not specific, to 3 units and prioritize attacking the enemy's back row within range. damage can be stacked on a single target. So what does that mean? That means that every 6 seconds, they're going to nuke the backline. Stormtroopers are amazing at actually nuking the backline. They tend to kill them well before you actually get through their enemy's melee in some cases, or mid-range if you're attacking a long-range player. If you're attacking another mid-range player, you're going to kill their backline that's there to protect Titans. We'll get into that when we talk about formations. And then you're going to kill their Titans, and then you're going to get back to the mid-range troops after you've killed the melee. So when it comes to these troops, they excel in this regard. And this really does get me into the next troop that has the same objective, but is on a different tier. So if you notice, the T9 Stormtroopers will also show up as T11, right? Because it's every other. So they're on the odd number progression path. The even number progression option is going to be rockets, which also means that they're the T12 option, the one that you're going to see most commonly in high city play. So they have the almost exact same ability. Every 3 attacks, every 6 seconds, deals tons of damage to a single enemy and prioritizes attacking the enemy's back row within range. So that means one troop type. Maybe it's just snipers. Maybe it's just EMP cannons. Maybe it's just cannons. Maybe it's just shielders. But every 6 seconds, we're going to launch a rocket at them, dealing a lot of damage. If you've ever fought a mid-range player as a back-range, city, as a long-range city, you're going to find that your back range or your back row will die before your front line does. And that's why it happens, is because they're bypassing the line every 6 seconds. So keep that 6 seconds in mind, because it's about to get important. When it comes to mid-range from there, you do have a couple of other troops that we do want to mention, right? So when we get into the T11s, and I can actually recruit T11s out of that one camp, you have the Gatling guns or machine guns. They have an ability which is every 5 attacks will enter a quick shot status, increasing attack speed for 3 seconds. And in PvE battle, that's, 120%. So their attack cooldown is base 1.5, and this gets me into the tanks from earlier. At 1.5, a 50% reduction goes down to 0.75. So that means they're getting off 4 attacks within 3 seconds. If you notice, it's every 5 attacks, enters quick shot status, which means basically you're going to get 4 quick shots followed by 1.5 right back into that. And in PvE combat, it's up almost 100% of the time, if not completely 100% of the time, because every 5 shots will do this. These guys are really good at getting mid-range players zombie kills, getting mid-range players high scores on Doom Iron and things like that. Like, this is what the unit that does that the best. Because for the entire fight, after those first 5 hits, you're going to be getting all of that benefit. The problem is, getting to those first 5 hits takes a long time, right? That is 7 seconds. All of those other abilities are working on that 3-second timer. It takes 7 seconds to become really good, and then they start to mow things down. So that is the goal and objective of the Gatling gun, is to last 7 seconds and then start to really tear things apart. The next troop and the last mid-range troop is going to be the bikes. The bikes have an ability for the first 10 seconds after battle starts, increases attack speed by 60%. And this is 30 seconds in PvE. So for the first 10 seconds, increases attack speed by 60%, meaning they have a 0.4 attack speed versus a 1 attack speed. Like, their attack cooldown is the lowest of any troop. They do hit decently hard for being a 5-unit troop. And their objective is to basically kill things as quick as possible in the first 10 seconds. They pair very good with Simon, but they're not that good overall. Again, most mid-range players are not trying to burn through your troops as fast as possible. They're trying to kill your back row before you get a chance to kill them. So these are good units, and that's, again, their objective. You're really going to use them for zombie kills and Doom Iron. Doom Iron lasts 33 seconds, in case anyone's wondering, so bikes are actually really good on Doom Iron too if you wanted to just start off with that really low attack speed. This gets me into back row, and I'm going to start with the worst of the back row troops in my humble opinion, which is the sniper. And yeah, this might be controversial because shielders exist, but to me these are the worst. So every 3 attacks, we have an attack that deals 1.8 times damage. They hit hard, snipers, but there's a problem, and that is they're attacking whatever they can reach. So the sniper is going to fire into melee right at the beginning of the combat. And they're going to continue firing into melee until everything in melee is dead. So this ability allows them every 6 seconds to fire that big shot that deals 1.8 damage. The nice thing about this is that 6-second timer at the beginning of combat is actually really decent because it doesn't time poorly with shield infantry and with your shredders. Because again, it's 6 seconds. So they have a 4-second damage reduction window. You're going to hit them right after that goes off. That is really nice about them. That's where that ends, though. Because after that, every subsequent shot, if you don't kill them instantly, if you do not kill their melee within 6 seconds, your sniper's shot will hit damage reduction every single attack from there on out until like the 30-second mark. That's why I don't like snipers, is they really just don't do a lot because of the way that 6-second timer really works. Good units. I'm not saying don't use them, but I have fallen away from liking them. Then we get into the shielder. I want to just talk about them next. Again, I'm going in order of how much I like them. Shielders, every 4 attacks will trigger a shield on a friendly target. This is basically every 8 seconds we're going to give a shield to somebody. It does prioritize melee. I know it doesn't say that. It does seem to prioritize melee. They're okay. The nice thing about the shielders in general is when you're fighting a mid-range city, you can add some of them in with your T11s, and in general, it's going to help you with fighting mid-range cities in the uranium mines because it's going to push your cannons out to the side and make the rockets attack you first. Very interesting troop. We'll talk a lot more about that later when we get into our long-range video. The next in priority, and this is the controversial part, is going to be uranium cannons, or cannons in general, right? And this is the hard part because you're going to hear cannons, you're going to hear EMP cannons. This is the next 2 troops. They're both amazing. The T11 cannons are some of the best troops in the game, period. They get a lot of kills. Bomb launcher is amazing. Every 6 seconds, we're going to launch 3 bombs at enemies, which means that if they have melee troops and you've killed all of their melee troops and they have nothing else like troop-wise alive, it's going to back up a row. So when it launches 3 bombs at enemies, it's going to launch 1 bomb set at the melee troops and then 1 bomb set at their zombies or whatever mid-range they have, and you're killing beyond the front row. This is why I like them better than snipers. This is why I prioritize them above shielders. They're killing beyond the front row. Your cannons are very, 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 very good. The T9 cannons are better at killing in cities than the T10 snipers in most circumstances. I have reports where my, wife's account got more kills in a fight using T9 cannons at C26 than I got as a C30 with triple her stats, because I was prioritizing snipers at that point. That's why this is so good, is because these guys do bypass that front row. They're really good. But there's a troop that does that better, in my opinion. The cool thing about cannons, by the way, is it is 3. The last troop, my favorite troop, is the EMP cannons. The reason I like them is because there's a statistical difference between them and the actual T11 cannon. So when you get to like the T12s, there's a fairly decent statistical difference between them because of the tier difference, right? That natural 17% that exists, and it's about 17%. I did the math between each tier a long time ago, and you're getting about 15% stats per, which means it's like a 30% increase when you go from a T10 to T12. But what you're finding, what you're going to see is this ability right here, which is laser. Every 3 attacks, every 6 seconds, a devastating laser beam will deal up to 3 damage, will deal damage to up to 3 units. So again, it's like the cannons in the sense that the bomb launcher will hit up to 3 units. This will also hit up to 3 units, so they're equal. The only reason why I say these are slightly better is because stat for stat, pound for pound, these ones are slightly higher on damage. This is very late in the video to talk about units, but units are 10, which means that each one EMP cannon is 10 units. Each one of the uranium cannons not uranium cannons, the doomsday cannons is 5 units. So if you double this, their attack, right? If you double that number, that's going to be 2410. So if you look at the T12, the final EMP cannon, you're going to see it's 2846. It's 400 more damage for the same amount of troops. This right here is why C-38s can stand a chance against long-range players. Mid-range players. Because the unit that those mid-range players really want is the Stormtrooper, but they only get it up to T11. The rockets are good, but it's only against a single target. This is an amazing troop. I highly recommend you get them. They are a pain to recruit. The cannons are nice because they're easy to recruit. These ones are not. But that unit will win you fights and should be a priority for a long-range player. So, I know it's a lot of information. This is one of my longer videos, going informationally speaking, and I'm so sorry for that. But getting into troops, I really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty on this one because it's important to understand each unit and what its objective is. My subsequent videos are going to be on formations and how to use these units. So when we start talking about what troops to use at what levels for long range and mid range and melee players, we're going to be keeping these objectives and these core functions in mind. That's why this video is going to be so long, is because it's going to help me shorten the other videos to make it more digestible for why we're choosing this. I'm not going to get so much into the why in that video as I'm going to talk about these are the troops that you're going to use at these tiers, and this is generally what you're going to want to make sure you're doing with your fleets to make sure that you're maximizing your potential. So stay tuned. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know how I'm doing. Make sure to give me that feedback, and let's, really focus in on getting those perfect fleets for how you like to play the game. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.